Hi, everyone. Welcome to a very rainy DC. It's very unusual to have this much rain, so hope you guys are surviving. You can really feel the swamp. I'm Rachael Nealer. I'm the Deputy Director of the Joint Office of Energy and Transportation, and it's really great to be here at National Clean Energy Week and see so many people who are invested in the future of clean energy, which is so important for supporting consumer choice and the well-being of our communities and the future of our country. I've been working on clean energy and transportation issues for years, so it's exciting to see the unstoppable momentum that has built up in this area with unprecedented federal funding meeting impressive private sector commitments. The public and private sector have come together to double our national public charging network since the start of the Biden-Harris administration. I think that deserves an applause. Making it easier for anyone to choose to ride and drive an electric vehicle. That's so exciting to me personally as an EV owner and professionally, and I hope everyone can celebrate that progress in charging. Now, I want to zoom out a little bit and look at our national blueprint for transportation decarbonization and to see how we got where we are today. Developed by the Departments of Energy, Transportation, Housing and Urban Development, and the Environmental Protection Agency, the blueprint is a landmark strategy for cutting all greenhouse gas emissions from the transportation sector by 2050. The blueprint recognized decarbonizing the transportation sector will require strategies and actions that approach the problem from all angles, from electrification to biofuels to hydrogen and fuel cell technologies. It envisions a future mobility system that is clean, safe, secure, accessible, affordable, and equitable, and provides decarbonized transportation options for people and goods. As the blueprint points out, transportation is the largest source of greenhouse gas emissions, and the light-duty vehicles account for about half of those emissions, making them a priority to decarbonize. The blueprint also stresses convenient, efficient, and clean transportation, and EVs check all of those boxes. Charging is convenient when you can plug in at home, at work, or in your community and go about your day, and EVs are much more efficient than gas cars, approaching 70% efficiency compared to 20 to 30% for gas vehicles. The EVs are clean as the grid that powers them, and so every grid improvement becomes a transportation improvement too. EVs are also good for business. You may have seen a recent MIT study that found EV charging boosted spending at nearby businesses to the tune of thousands of extra dollars annually for nearby businesses. This increase was particularly pronounced for businesses in under-resourced areas. Investing in charging in communities can help create jobs and grow local economies. The benefits of federal investment in clean transportation are accruing to communities across America, growing a shared future with good paying jobs in growing industries. The Joint Office itself is responsible for kicking off 7 EV charging workforce development projects, totaling almost $10 million across Oregon, Alabama, Pennsylvania, California, Wisconsin, Virginia, and the DC-Baltimore area. Since the start of the Biden-Harris administration, 34 electric vehicle charging infrastructure companies have announced manufacturing facilities in the US, representing over $500 million in private investment. In February of 2024, IANA, a joint venture to build a high-powered EV charging network of at least 30,000 chargers across North America, received regulatory approval and began operations. Its first charging stations are expected to open in the US in this year, followed by Canada. IANA is a joint venture of 7 of the world's foremost automakers: BMW, General Motors, Honda, Hyundai, Kia, Mercedes-Benz, and Stellantis, and Toyota joined in July of 2024. Major companies like Walmart, Starbucks, BP, Travel Centers of America, Pilot, Flying J, Sheetz, Wawa, Marriott, and Hilton are all building thousands of EV chargers at retail locations, truck stops, fueling centers, and hotels across the country. Automakers are committed to electrification, and the EVs are a leading area for sales growth in most auto brands. More broadly, over 160 companies in the battery supply chain, including critical minerals, processing, and manufacturing, have announced facilities in the US, representing more than $100 billion and more than 70,000 jobs. Many of the team members in the Joint Office of Energy and Transportation have been in Detroit this week at a conference with state energy and transportation associations, talking with states about their needs. In fact, all 50 states, including Puerto Rico and DC, have submitted their plans to use federal National Electric Vehicle Infrastructure funding to build out charging. 40 of those states have issued solicitations already, many of those actually offering second or third solicitations already. 77 charging ports are open in 19 locations as well. I had the pleasure of going to New York last winter to charge at one of them, one of our first federally funded EV charging stations. It was impressive to see the people coming together to celebrate charging. This federal investment in charging is filling gaps in the network to ensure that we build out a convenient, reliable national EV charging network that will help us meet our clean energy goals and carry out the blueprint for transportation decarbonization. We are bringing everyone with us as we work on that blueprint. We are building a future where everyone can choose to ride or drive electric, regardless of geography or income. And remember that EVs are not just passenger vehicles. We are also electrifying buses, freight, bikes, and more. From small to large, there is an EV option for pretty much anyone in any use case. So I think the future of the EVs is bright, and the United States has a huge opportunity to stake out our position as a global leader in EVs, charging, and battery manufacturing by creating good new jobs, clean energy choices, and a brighter future for our kids. I'm excited to hear from the panel of experts that are going to discuss the future of EVs, and I really thank you for inviting me and for your time today. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Nealer, and it's now my pleasure to introduce our next panel and our moderator on the future of electric vehicles. Please join me in welcoming India Herdman, the Senior Manager of Policy Affairs at the Consumer Technology Association, for the next introductions.
Hello, everyone. How are we today? Oh, we can do better. There we go. Thank you. Thank you so much for coming today. CTA is really excited to be a part of National Clean Energy Week. It's the first time we've participated, and kind of shows how the Consumer Technology Association has grown and sees EVs and the transportation ecosystem as one of the really revolutionary portions of the technology industry that's making lives better, safer. I'm going to be really quick with introductions here, but just so you all are not confused as to why someone from CTA is up on this stage right now, we own the Consumer Electronics Show, CES, which is now one of the largest auto shows in the globe, and we help to ensure that the EV industry and the ecosystem has success, and so do my panelists here. So I'm going to quickly introduce them, and then we'll go down with quick introductions. So to my immediate left, I have Pat Risner, who is president of South 32 Hermosa, Yvonne Mclntyre, who is vice president of federal affairs at PG&E. I have Todd Foley, who is head of government and investor relations at Zeta Energy, Lee Godown, head of government affairs at Nikola Corporation, and Corey Ershow, senior manager of public policy and senior counsel at Rivian. So please give them a round of applause and welcome them. Pat, I would like to start with you, and we'll go down the line here. If you can just tell us a little bit about yourself and what your company does in the EV space.
No, thank you. South 32 is really pleased to be here today and spend some time talking to you about what we're doing with the Hermosa project in southern Arizona. So we're developing Hermosa in a historic mining district near Patagonia, Arizona, in the southern part of the state. And it's a state-of-the-art next-generation mining operation that will use next-generation technology to create a more safe and sustainable mining operation. If we're going to decarbonize, reduce greenhouse gas emissions, we are going to have to invest in domestic supply chains, and that's really what we're doing at Hermosa. It's the only advanced mine development in the U.S. that will produce two USGS-listed critical minerals, manganese and zinc, which are both essential for our efforts to decarbonize. The link to this topic today is it's a fully integrated source of manganese for the electric vehicle battery manufacturing market, and we're targeting that market. We are highly reliant on foreign sources for both of these critical minerals, so we are addressing that issue by creating a more sustainable domestic supply chain. We've made a big investment and a big commitment to a low-carbon future. We announced earlier this year a commitment of $2.2 billion to put the project into full construction for first production in early 2027. We'd spent about $400 million up to that point. So it's about a $2.6 billion commitment for the first phase of the project. There aren't too many places in the U.S. where you can go see a large-scale new mine in construction. We are one of the few places where you can see that, and so we're really pleased with that. But I think the last thing that's really critical about Hermosa is the opportunity we have to create domestic supply chains, but in doing so, really lift up communities and set a new standard. We're going to do some things very differently from an environmental and sustainability standpoint, we believe, to set a new standard for the industry, but we'll also create 900 long-term jobs for 50-plus years that generate income equal to about 2 times the average household income in an area that has extremely high rates of poverty and unemployment. So transformational socially for our community as well.
Yvonne?
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for having me here today, and welcome all of you who are in the audience. So Yvonne Mclntyre, Vice President of Federal Affairs for PG&E, so that's Pacific Gas and Electric Corporation. We are the electric and gas utility serving Northern and Central California. We serve about 60 million customers in a 70,000 square foot service territory. We have a very strong commitment to the environment. We have set pretty aggressive climate goals, including being net zero by 2040, which is 5 years before California's commitment, and then being nature positive by 2050, meaning that we will be removing more carbon emissions that we're putting into the air. Right now, our connection to this, obviously, we provide the power that's going to electrify all of this transportation and EVs. Right now, there are over 610,000 EVs in our service territory. That's 1 in 8 electric vehicles in the country. And that represents about 1% of our peak load right now. We have made a commitment to facilitate 3 million electric vehicles in our service territory by 2030. And so we are in the process of planning how we're going to get there. I think as all utilities are, it's not just EVs, electrification, transportation, that's going to add load to our systems. We're looking at increasing electrification of buildings, and so we're all in this kind of state of trying to figure out how we're going to meet that new load, adding capacity. We're in California. It's very difficult to build anything new. We do have restrictions on, fossil plants being built in our state, and so we are kind of thinking through very innovative ways that we're going to be able to meet our future load while continuing to serve electricity reliably and affordably to our customers.
Hi, everybody. Todd Foley with Zeta Energy. Zeta Energy is a Houston-based developer and manufacturer of lithium-sulfur batteries and battery materials used in EVs, grid applications, as well as many others, including on the military side of the equation. I think what's novel about our batteries especially is that we help solve the key market challenges faced by EVs. Our batteries actually involve only domestic feedstocks when we're so reliant on other foreign countries for the materials, minerals needed in the area of the battery and technology for EVs. we usually just use domestic feedstocks. We use industrial sulfur, which is a byproduct, a waste product of the refining operation, and we turn that into important advanced cathodes. We eliminate the need to use other minerals that are hard to get, found in difficult places around the world, places like the Congo, Indonesia, Russia, and they're also not refined in China. Our materials are found here domestically, are used domestically, and I think that's an important game changer as we look at EVs going forward. So we help solve the key challenges with the EV market, and I think this is really particularly important. Of course, it's critical that we continue innovation in battery production, and I think that's very important for our domestic competitiveness, as well as the future of the EV market here in the U.S. and around the world.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Lee Godown. I head up government affairs at Nikola Corporation, headquartered in Phoenix, Arizona, with a manufacturing facility about an hour south of Phoenix in Coolidge, Arizona. We do basically two things at Nikola. We manufacture Class 8 heavy trucks, the kinds you see on the interstates and probably get in your way on your commutes. But there is a battery electric version of that, and there's a fuel cell electric version of that. Basically the same body style. Unless you knew, you couldn't tell them apart, except for the powertrains. We started out making battery electric versions of it. Was very popular, but we can talk about it maybe a little later. The fuel cell electric version is even more popular, and it has a lot of advantages over the BEV, both EV powered though, not combustion. We employ about 350 people in Coolidge and around the country. We focus on North America. We focus on the United States for the moment. Canada as well. Like a lot of other companies, we really focus as well in California because of the incentives and the need for the trucks because of regulation there. We're very proud of the truck. Any one of you could drive it. It's really easy. Some of you have maybe seen it. If I can drive it, you can drive it. It's really a pleasure to drive. Very quiet. You don't have to shift anything, and it's a light year away from the kind of things you may have seen in the diesel or internal combustion area. So happy to be here today. Thank you, and look forward to the discussion.
Corey?
Hey, I'm Corey Ershow. I head federal affairs for Rivian Automotive. Rivian is, I guess, the consumer side OEM here. We produce that. We produce the R1T pickup truck, the R1S full-size SUV, and we also produce an all-electric commercial vehicle. Most notably, if you ever see an electric Amazon vehicle driving around, that's one of ours. They've got a purchase order of 100,000 to electrify their fleet. We've been manufacturing or in production for about 3 years now. And this is a vehicle that is very much out there. This is not some near future. I guarantee everybody in this room has seen the Rivian, even if you don't necessarily know that you have. The R1T and the R1S especially are what we consider our handshake with the world. They are a proof of concept for everything that an EV can be and everything that a pickup can be, everything that an SUV can be. They are easily the best vehicles I've ever driven. Best vehicles I've ever owned, and they're incredibly high performance. And I think this is one of the really important things is we've seen the evolution in EVs from purely what I'd say environmentally oriented curiosity to just a better product that happens to be much better for the environment. And so happy to talk more about that and everything else. And otherwise, thank you for having me up here.
Thanks, and thank you for sharing your stories with us. Lee, I want to start with you. Yesterday, President Trump made a very interesting comment at one of his rallies. He insinuated that fuel cell technology in vehicles is a lot less safe than other vehicles. And so I want to give you a chance to respond to that, as well as ways that fuel cell technology for EVs is actually beneficial as has been proven.
Oh, wonderful. You seem so nice in the green room, so thank you for the softball. Yeah, I saw the President Trump's quote. One of the misconceptions about fuel cells, and many of you may know this, is that they're more dangerous. And there was an event early in the 20th century in New Jersey involving something called the Hindenburg that has kind of tarnished the reputation of hydrogen ever since. It's as safe as any other flammable liquid, like diesel or gasoline. The containers that are on our truck are made out of multi-layered Kevlar, carbon fiber, much more robust to the point where I've fired a 50 caliber bullet into it and nothing happened, thankfully. So the misnomer, and with all respect to the former president, that's a part of the problem. That's a part of the problem that we deal with every day. I've talked to fire department officials in California where we want to permit our hydrogen fueling infrastructure part of the business, who will say to me, doesn't that leak out on the ground? Doesn't that catch on fire? No, it's actually a gas and it evaporates. So it's a matter of education. I don't want to surmise where the former president got his information, but trust me, we're rapidly trying to better inform him. There are those in the EV space that are concerned about others that have different kinds of ways to power electric motors. Hydrogen is one of those. So a lot of EV, this gentleman notwithstanding, a lot of EV heavy truck manufacturers are concerned about other ways to power Class 8 trucks. So don't blame him for mentioning that. Looking forward to more fully informing him and others that have that concern.
Yeah, I want to bring Pat into the conversation here about the importance of American dominance in this field, right? So we're talking about the suppliers, the minerals, and Hermosa is breaking ground, as you just mentioned. So wondering if you can talk a little bit about how you see the domestic supply chain for manganese, specifically in zinc, evolving, and how that's going to increase American global competitiveness in the EV market.
Yeah, so to kind of give you an idea, when we think about EV batteries, I think probably the materials or the minerals that come to people's mind are lithium, nickel, cobalt, graphite. We often talk about manganese as kind of the forgotten battery metal. But nonetheless, some of the same challenges around where we source these materials from exist across most of those supply chains. We haven't mined manganese not just in the U.S., but in North America in over 50 years. The last time we mined 1 ton of it was the early 1970s. Greater than 95% of the high purity manganese that goes into electric vehicle batteries comes from China now. Both of these minerals are on the critical minerals list too, that we're almost 100% reliant on foreign sources. So that is a security issue. Security issue, I think, obviously concerns around sustainability. So that's why projects like this are important. We can source these materials domestically. We can do it in a more sustainable and responsible way. Fully integrated projects like Hermosa, where we will mine the ore and process the ore into a high purity manganese product that can go directly into the battery manufacturing supply chain, are really important. And so I think some things to watch in this space. Obviously, we'll probably get into things like permitting later on. That's been the challenging part of the mineral supply chain in terms of timing. I think there's been a belief that the mining industry could not deliver these materials in the time that the industry needs because we've had challenges around permitting timelines and the like. We are solving that. We're the first mining project to be added to the federal government's Fast 41 permitting program last year. But I think the other one to watch in terms of how it develops over time, if we can solve issues like permitting, the recent IRA interpretations around 30D, one of the things we're seeing is the midstream portion of the supply chain. So for us, particularly PCAM, precursor materials, which ultimately are our customers, with the way that interpretation played out, we're seeing a lot of decisions. Do I put the midstream in free trade agreement countries, closer to existing battery supply chains, maybe where there's a perception that it's easier to permit, maybe closer to larger ore basins, low cost jurisdictions, things like that, versus having the midstream in the U.S. And so I think that's an important one to watch in terms of how the minerals portion of the supply chain evolves. Permitting them in a timely manner, I think a project like Hermosa will be a great test case. As we go through Fast 41, it is working. We're into that process. We're going to get an approval in a little over 2 years, which the average historically has been 6 to 7 years, and we have projects that have been permitting for more than a decade. So I think Hermosa will be an important proof point that we can actually deliver in the time frame that the supply chain needs. But I think from a policy standpoint, where we end up with where the midstream of the supply chain is located is really important to bring that back to the U.S. so we can have an end-to-end supply chain domestically.
Yeah, CTA completely agrees with you, and I think everyone up here would as well. Todd, can you talk a little bit about the technology and the innovations that are going into next generation EV batteries and anything that you think specifically will enhance U.S. competitiveness in the space?
I think there is obviously a heavy focus on battery development in the U.S. and elsewhere around the world, because it really is the key element of in an EV. The battery is about 70% of EV costs, and about 75 to 80% of battery costs relate to the materials in those batteries. So we really do have to come at this, and I think the area, probably the most important area for the innovation is in the use of our active materials. We need to do what we can to develop the resources we have here in the U.S., and I think that's critical. And we need to look at materials that are more abundant and cheaper. And I think what we're doing is, I think, an important part of that solution. As I touched on, we use sulfur, which is a waste product of oil and gas refining. We actually can use the industrial dirty sulfur, and so that's important. And not only is sulfur abundant and cheaper, but it really adds a huge dimension on the performance of the cathode and ultimately the performance of the overall battery. So it makes them more efficient as well. Sulfur has higher energy density, and it's about 40% lighter weight than a lithium-ion battery. So that's really important when we think about how EVs operate, their efficiency, their cost, and as we go forward. And of course, that cost issue is just huge, because that gets to affordability and mass use of EVs. So I think there are really important innovations in this front. On the lithium side, we use standard lithium, but there's a lot of activity here domestically in the U.S., right, Pat, to tap into lithium resources in water brine. Berkshire Hathaway has a project at the Salton Sea to tap into the lithium there. There's even lithium in geothermal wells. So all of those activities are very important, but the use of these more abundant domestic materials are really, really key from I think certainly an economic competitive standpoint and uptake of EVs, but even from a national security and energy security perspective as well, because right now, as we all know, we're reliant on external sources for these materials, and if we're going to compete with the Chinese and others in the space, we really have to look domestically here on the domestic resources. So it's really, really critical for our economic competitiveness, but even on energy and national security.
So you hit on a topic that I want Yvonne to speak to, and that's affordability and reliability. There are concerns about the grid and the infrastructure that enables the EV revolution. Can you talk about where we are to ensure that we can handle the load that is needed to ensure that the demand is met, as well as anything that you're hearing from your customers about the affordability piece?
We're hearing a lot about affordability these days. So as you know, PG&E has had a little bit of a checkered past, and we are kind of making up for that. We had issues with wildfires in the past that were started by our equipment, and so we have been undertaking huge investments in making our system more reliable and safe. When our new CEO, Patty Poppe, came on board in 2021, she announced that we are going to undertake a 10,000-mile undergrounding project over the next 10 years. our service territory, as I said, is very large, 70,000 square miles. A lot of that is forested, rocky terrain. So it's a very expensive proposition for us to do that. And so we are, looking at every way to bring down the cost of making those investments, and obviously at the same time, looking forward to trying to meet increased load due to electrification of not just transportation, but buildings as well. So, IIJA has been great as far as trying to, apply for grants and IRA loans to help offset those costs to, again, mitigate the cost impact to our customers. So part of the thing that we're doing too is we look at what we can do to increase capacity of our grid is while we're making those investments and doing the projects to make our system safer, is pairing an increased capacity project along with the undergrounding or other ways that we're doing system hardening and whatnot to make our system safe. We're also looking at ways to satisfy customer need. Part of it too is actually really getting to what is it the customer actually needs. We get a lot of complaints about not being able to interconnect new projects in the time that they say they need it. But what we also see is the fact that I think there are a lot of people coming into the system saying, we have this project, we're going to want to energize by a certain date. They're not even realistic on their own side. They just want to get in the queue. And so, really managing, like, what are your timelines? What are your actual timeline? What are your actual needs? Because a lot of times they also overstate what their actually capacity need is going to be. And so, again, trying to get all the information right, working closely with the customers to make sure that we are getting everything in the queue that's needed to be in at the time that's going to be needed. We're also looking at potentially, okay, you have a project and energizing it in stages. So you have a new bank of EV chargers coming in. You get half of them built. We'll energize that half while you continue to work on finalizing your project and us being able to build in the capacity to do that. We're looking at also some distributed energy solutions. So looking at, person coming in, a new load, is there a way to then shift the load to a different time of day? California has a tremendous amount of renewables, particularly solar in the system. So during the middle of the day, when the sun is shining, we have excess power in the grid, and sometimes we have to curtail renewable energy coming into the system because of that. And so can we look at ways to, have EVs charge during the daytime, take some of that load off the system. You're using renewable energy instead of everybody goes home at night, plugs in their EVs, and this is the time sun goes down, that dramatically drops off the system. We're powering up, gas peakers to serve that load. So let's shift the load throughout the day to even out the peak demand times. And so we're looking at all these different solutions. Again, maybe putting a battery installation on site where the chargers are. So lots of things as we're going through, just trying to really figure out what is our need going to be in the future. I mean, we expect, like I said before, 1% of our peak load is EVs. By 2040, it's expected to be 31% of our load. That's a 70% increase over that time in retail sales. So we're expecting, we've estimated by 2032, we need to increase our capacity by 3 gigawatts. Again, it's very hard to build new resources in California. So what other ways that can we do to meet that need? We're looking at grid enhancing technologies, so you increase the capacity of your current energy lines, electricity lines. But everybody also just looks at EVs typically as a problem that's going to come onto the grid. How are we going to serve all this load? Well, we also look at it as an opportunity. We can actually utilize EVs as batteries to provide power to the grid. Mm-hmm. So again, at the times that we have some constraints on the grid, we can use those collectively, and we already have pilot programs where we're doing this. Is that we pay our customers a fee to allow them to basically send power back to the grid when we need it. In times where there is a weather emergency and a power line goes out, we're testing. We have pilot projects right now with Ford and GM for basically bidirectional charging, so vehicle to grid, so that they can just power their own houses with their EV. A Ford F-150 Lightning has a battery capacity to supply power to a house for 5 days. Right now, with the Tesla battery packs, depending on how many you cascade, maybe you get 8 hours of the day. And so we're just looking for all different types of ways to actually utilize this tremendous power that's coming onto the grid to actually provide power back to the grid.
Thank you. Corey, let's talk advanced manufacturing, totally key to this entire endeavor. Rivian is leading in this. So can you just talk a little bit about the importance of making sure that we have the capabilities to produce your vehicles and anything that you're specifically looking for as you develop your next gen?
Well, the word renaissance comes to mind when it comes to EV manufacturing in the United States especially. And this is an area where we really have been leading. And I'll speak to the Rivian experience and then broaden out a little bit industry-wide. We manufacture entirely within the U.S. We manufacture in Illinois, about 2.5 hours south of Chicago, in the town of Normal, Illinois. We took over an abandoned Mitsubishi plant. At its height, that plant employed about 2,500 people, if I've got those numbers right. At times, we've employed more than 9,000 people at that plant to do EVs. So the possible workforce is just so much greater for EVs, and the impact on the community really can't be understated. I mean, there is a hotel, my favorite hotel in the area, was slated for closure before we came in. Now you can't get a room. So you talk about advanced manufacturing and the jobs that are created by investing in EV manufacturing particularly, and it's not just those that are in the plant, it's community-wide. I saw a statistic the other day that there have been about $126 billion of investments planned for EVs and EV-related projects in the United States over the last couple of years. This, needless to say, is massive, right? I mean, we haven't yet scratched the surface of our max capacity at our plant, and we're already looking toward what's next with the planned investment in Georgia, which is going to produce our next generation of vehicles, the R2 and the R3, the R3X. We'll begin production of the R2 out of Normal, but we're going to need a lot more capacity than we have out of that one plant. We're already talking about growth, and despite what I think some of the popular narratives are, EV demand continues to grow. EV demand is still higher than it was previously, and I think that we see a lot of possibility for that demand to really take that upward end of the hockey stick growth. I think that what we are really tracking, what we really need, is some business certainty. We're a business like any others, and we have production timelines that are measured in years rather than months. We need a stable environment, and we need to know that the policies that are in place now are going to be ones that we can rely on in the future. What I would just say is legislative whiplash doesn't help anybody. We really need to have some business stability and certainty, and the United States is poised to be a real leader in this industry and to really outcompete the rest of the world because we've got the workforce to do it, we've got the experience, we've got the businesses, and we've got the innovation. So we just got to do it.
Are there any policies right now as a new market entrant, non-traditional OEM, just literally 3 years into it, right? Like we're gunning. What is a challenge for you guys right now? What are you watching with hesitancy?
So I'll talk about an opportunity, and as Dr. Nealer alluded to earlier, EVs constantly get cleaner as the grid gets cleaner. That's really important to us, so we make sure to power every Rivian that rolls off the line with 100% renewable energy. We actually just put up our own wind turbine at our facility. that becomes harder to do when you're talking about much more distributed sources and by building plants that are a lot farther away from other renewable energy sources. And so, I think that we're really excited by some of the conversation that's happening in Washington around permitting reform, particularly for renewable energy projects, transmission, interconnection, things like that represents a huge opportunity to make sure that no matter where you are in the country, no matter what the local energy load looks like, you can get renewable energy where it needs to go.
I'll be less graceful than Corey is. We're fighting a pretty bad bill in Congress that's gaining a lot of momentum that would be really damaging to EV OEMs, and that's the AM Radio for Every Vehicle Act. There is just general electromagnetic interference with EV batteries and analog AM radio. So having to design a car around an AM radio as a primary design requirement when you want to be prioritizing efficiency and please laugh. Thank you. I'm so glad we're all on the same page.
$1,000 AM radio.
Yep, $1,000 AM radio. Okay, we have a few more minutes. Lee, I just want to start to wrap up the conversation. What are you most excited about over the next several years? And let's be quick, because I want to get to everyone on this question. Thank you.
In business, it's really interesting when your customers can show you the way. So we started out making battery electric vehicles. Now we're making battery electric as well as fuel cell electric. It turns out at ports, the fuel cell is actually more popular for our customers because you can sit there, you can cool off, you don't have to recharge it. It can go 500 miles. If it's behind the fence for an electric charger, it's more complicated in terms of operating the vehicle. So I'm excited about our customers kind of telling us what they want, and we can meet them where they need to be.
Pat?
I think really demonstrating a different way forward around sustainability in our part of the sector. I think we'll do that at Hermosa. We're designing a project that will only disturb about 750 acres of land. To put that into context, our open pit copper mines in the U.S. are 10 to 40,000 acres, 90% less water use, and we will have a path to be the first net zero mining operation, all battery electric fleets underground and on the surface, and also fully powered by renewable energy. So I think a lot of the perceptions around the industry, if these products are going to support decarbonization in electric vehicles, we need to produce them in a way that's consistent with that. The Chinese high purity manganese has 4 times the carbon intensity of domestic manganese, and this is all about decarbonizing. So I think demonstrating that in our part of the sector and that we can deliver when the supply chain needs it is most exciting for us.
Todd?
I think just a couple of things. What's important, I think, as we look ahead here, continued bipartisan support for the domestic supply chains. I think it's really critical, especially in certain areas like batteries. It's because they're just not just important for EVs, but for grid reliability. As we decarbonize the grid, we need more storage, of course, as we all know. At the same time, on the military, our military is actually reliant on batteries for just about everything they do, and being relying on other countries for that is an issue. So I think the domestic supply chain factor is really important. That bipartisan support is key. And to Pat's final point, I think what it takes to make those batteries is really critical. We need more and more use of domestic materials. Also, I would just add that processes like ours are actually net negative on carbon. We actually take methane and destroy it to make our anodes. We use the carbon to develop carbon nanotubes, which are a key component of our anode. So there's lots of excitement around this new technology as it develops and as we grow the market, and as we look at, I think, displacing some of the lithium-ion technologies that are out there.
Yvonne?
As I noted, we expect to facilitate 3 million EVs coming onto our system. We are excited to say that we would like 2 million of those, at least 2 million of those, to have the VGI technology. Just being able to, again, with the system that is kind of as complex as ours, and the way that it's already kind of shaping up with just completely blowing away, like in the past what our kind of load curve was to be able to kind of see the possibilities to allow existing resources that are out there. People are driving around them every day. People have batteries and solar panels installed in the house, that we all kind of are interconnected in a way to be able to manage our grid without having to build another fossil plant in, well, we can't anyway in California, but in the region, but just facilitating this new path forward to help us reach our net zero goals.
Corey, last word, please.
Yeah, at the risk of being played off as the clock hit triple zeros, I've been in the EV space for more than a decade now, and I originally came to EVs through a national security angle because I saw American leadership in electric vehicles is really critical to securing our future energy independence, and making sure that we were a leader economically. I'm so excited about the opportunity to realize that. And as the technology has matured to the point where, again, EVs are just better. They're just better than the alternative internal combustion technology. Anyone who's drive one will disagree. They're powerful, they're fast, they have the range that people need. The charging network is robust. I mean, it is just a better product. And now it can turn the focus to really building that American supply chain and friendshoring the supply chain. And we've seen policies put in place that have really incentivized the private sector to, make those more responsible choices. And we have an opportunity to really outcompete the rest of the world, and yes, to outcompete China by attacking the issue head on.
Thank you, and thank you so much for sharing your insights and being here. I know Pat is from Arizona, Lee, Arizona, so they made the trip to be here with us, and so thank you so much for your time. And Dr. Nealer, thank you for participating on behalf of the CREST team. If I may be so bold, thank you, and thanks for joining us, everyone.
Thank you, panelists. For this, we'll have a quick networking bio break for the next 15 minutes or so. If you're attending tonight's dinner and do not have a table number on your name badge, please go to registration desk real quick before 5 o'clock, and we'll get that on your badge. Anyway, we'll see you around 3 o'clock. Thanks.
Hello, I'm Maria Pope,